Okay, let's dive into this. Picture this. You've got a thriving, world-class city, a total melting pot of cultures and ideas. But inside that city, there's this community that's just on the verge of completely self-destructing. This is the story of ancient Corinth and a letter written to them that, honestly, feels like it could have been written yesterday.
So if you just looked at this church in Corinth from the outside, you'd think, wow, they've got it all figured out. They were diverse, they were energetic, they were growing. But underneath all that success, something was seriously wrong. It was like a hidden cancer, just eating away at the very heart of their community, threatening to tear the whole thing apart from the inside.
All right, so before we can even talk about the solution Paul offers, we have to get a real sense of just how bad things had gotten. I mean, we're not talking about a simple disagreement over coffee. No, Paul, the guy who wrote this letter, is describing a complete and total meltdown.
And the word he uses to describe what's happening, it's just incredibly strong.
Yeah, the original Greek word here, it's the kind of word you'd use for a clay pot that's been dropped and just smashed into 1,000 tiny pieces. A break so bad you can't even think about gluing it back together. So you have to ask, right, what on earth could cause a community to shatter like that?
Well, the crazy thing is, the root of all this chaos wasn't some deep, complex theological argument. Nope, it was something we'd instantly recognize today, celebrity culture. Seriously, the Corinthians had gotten caught up in this war of followers. They were like spiritual superfans, way more loyal to their favorite speaker than to the actual message.
So instead of being one unified group, they were in a constant spiritual tug of war. People were picking sides, you know? I'm on Team Paul. Well, I'm on Team Apollos. They turned their teachers into rival team captains and were pitting them against each other like it was some kind of championship.
And Paul's response to all this? He just comes in with a series of sharp, rhetorical questions that are basically designed to show them just how absurd their behavior is. And his very first question, man, it cuts right to the heart of the problem. And with that one question, he just lays it all bare. They totally lost the plot. They were so focused on the messengers, the celebrity speakers, that they'd completely forgotten about the one single message that was supposed to unite them all.
Okay, so this is where Paul's solution gets really, really interesting. Because he doesn't fight back and say, hey, I'm the best teacher, you should follow me. Not at all. Instead, he does a total pivot. He completely reframes the entire conversation around an idea that, to the people of his day, was just absurd. It was scandalous.
He points them away from all the arguments about human leaders and status and wisdom, and he forces them to look at the one thing that was at the very center of their faith, a crucified Savior. Think about that. To the rest of the world, that looked like weakness. It looked like the ultimate defeat. But for Paul, that was the ultimate display of God's power.
Now, to really get why this was so radical, we have to kind of step into their world for a second. We need to understand the major culture clash that was going on, especially around this idea of wisdom.
You see, you basically had two different worldviews clashing. On one side, many Jews were looking for a powerful Messiah, someone who would show up with big, flashy, miraculous signs. And on the other side, you had the Greeks, who valued brilliant, intellectual, philosophical arguments. A message about a suffering, crucified Messiah, it didn't fit into either of those boxes. It sounded weak to one group and just plain foolish to the other.
And right there, that's the absolute core of Paul's argument. What the world was looking at and calling a total failure, a humiliating defeat, Paul presents as the ultimate victory. What the world dismissed as foolishness, Paul holds up as the very wisdom of God himself.
And this leads us to maybe the most powerful idea in this whole letter. God's kingdom operates with a completely different value system. It's an upside-down kingdom. Everything the world says is important, God kind of flips on its head.
Paul lays it out like this. God intentionally chooses the things and the people that the world sees as foolish and weak. Why? To show that real strength and real wisdom have nothing to do with human status or how smart you are or how powerful you are. It ensures that nobody can boast about themselves. All the credit goes back to God. And that's a really humbling idea, for sure.
And this brings us right back to that shattered church in Corinth. The solution to their division wasn't to pick the best leader or win the argument. The real answer was for everyone on every side to adopt this posture of humility, to center themselves not on a human personality but on the cross.
You know, this letter to Corinth really forces us to look at our own world, which is just full of division, right? It's a reminder that the things our culture often values most, power, status, intellectual pride, are so often the very things that tear us apart. And it leaves us with this powerful challenge to consider a totally different kind of wisdom, one that isn't found in winning or being the smartest person in the room, but in humility. So the question it leaves for us is, where are we going to choose to find our wisdom?